Hello and welcome back to Standing Apart, the podcast about what makes people, businesses and ideas distinctive in a world full of imitation, with me, Nigel Ridpath. This episode is the second part of my conversation with Johan Roos, and if you haven't heard the first part yet, I'd really encourage you to go back and start there. But if you're joining us fresh, here's where we've got to. Johan is a management scholar, co-inventor of the globally adopted Lego serious play methodology, professor and former chief academic officer at Hult International Business School, and author of Human Magic, Leading with Wisdom in an Age of Algorithms. In our first conversation, Johan introduced the central idea of the book, that every professional now faces a daily choice between an erosion curve, where AI quietly atrophies your human capabilities, and an amplification curve, where it sharpens them. We talked about the self-assessment questions from the book, algorithmic skepticism, and what it really means to think before you reach for an answer. In this episode, we pick up from there and go deeper. What does the scale of AI deployment actually look like right now? What does it cost us as humans? What are the 5 capabilities that matter most? And what do leaders actually need to do? So, Johan, let's pick up. Let's pick up from our last episode, and we were talking about the amplification about AI. And the future is this choice where we can choose to have it amplify human capabilities, or we can fall into the trap of it eroding them. What do you see this being more or less a problem in different industries?
I think, well, first of all, good to be back, Nigel. And I think these issues are across the board. I think these amazing tools, I think we can all see it, impact probably some tasks of every white-collar worker, if I put it this way, knowledge worker in the world, across all boards, all industries, all whatever sizes you have. And it's happening very, very fast right now. And this is why it's good to have these conversations about, like, wow, do we rush ahead, and what should we just be a little bit careful of when we rush ahead? People are deploying massive amounts of AI agents as we speak now.
Yeah. I mean, I heard Satya Nadella say the other day that he's like token maxing, and I'm sure he's allowed quite a lot of tokens, right? But you know, I guess for the first time, I'm kind of hearing from, the technology community, actually just use this for the things where it's going to have the biggest benefit, and don't use it in a trivial way, because actually it's quite expensive. And I think that economic model is only really starting to show its face.
I think you're absolutely right. There's a macro pictures of this, and I'm sure the bosses of the tech companies are using this a lot. I heard another one having deployed over 1,000 agents working for him during the nighttime. That's above our pay grade, so to say. But I have 4 or 5 working during the nights, and that's a lot. That's token maximizing for me. But there is a macro studies happening right now on deployment, of course, and it's happening so fast. And one of the studies I often refer to is this Project Iceberg, I think it's called, at MIT. They've looked at, so they've even simulated 150 million workers across 32,000 skills and God knows 15,000 AI tools. And they see that what we detect now is just a tiny fraction, the tip of the iceberg. Right?
Yeah.
And they call it, they they're nice enough to call it the white collar surprise rather than shock coming along. So deployment is extraordinarily fast now and extraordinarily impactful. And so far, we haven't really talked about these costs. There's the energy costs,
Yeah.
but there's also this extraordinary human cost to it. People are pretty nervous. I talked to a lot of people and they are a little bit anxious and nervous, and young kids are, both excited, but a lot of them are quite nervous. Remember, this is in the context of like, well, we're not going to have the same future as you had, dad and mom, which I think every generation says, by the way. But there is something to it here. But there is a cost, and I think the human cost is going to be debated soon a little bit more, and an indicator of that, Nigel, is when you have commencement speaks in the US at graduations by famous tech people being booed, when they talk about how exciting AI is. The students are booing it.
Yeah.
They sort of go, whoa, that's new. That's like a small signal that there's more to it than these exciting tools and stock prices, right? For the wealthy, in a sense.
I mentioned Satya Nadella, but just thinking about how Microsoft have gone about implementing this technology internally. They very much adopted a kind of burning ships approach, which is we'll get rid of the people and then we'll work out how to get the job done using AI. Now, that's you and I come from European liberal democracies where that sort of thing is kind of frowned on to a certain extent. But that's what they've done, and you just wonder about the human cost of that.
It is, you can say, it is the strength of the U.S. economy to be, quote unquote, dynamic in this respect that you are. And I function in the U.S. as well. I worked there. This notion of being employed at will, and when the will is no longer there, you take your cardboard box like, in the movies and walk out. So there is but there is, of course, a tremendous human cost to it when this happens. But remember now that some of these companies have also started hiring back people as well, because they realized that, that was maybe overdoing it. It seems like we'll always work in a pendulum swing way. But I think what's happening now is that this phrase that people used to say, at least, and some still say, like, people are our greatest resource, or even more, keep the human at the center, is becoming, you call the cards now. Like, because when the CEO come in and present to the board and say, hey, we're going to restructure this part of it and we're going to replace it with these many agents and it's going to lead to these many redundancies, some upskilling, but some redundancies. But we all agree that we should keep humans at the center. It becomes sort of a nice phrase and totally useless. So I think there is a job to do for people who believe in the power of humanism, in a sense, even in organized life. That we are so much more than just a cog in the wheel to do, because if we can't sort of defend that, it's not worthwhile. And this is what I'm working on, Peter, right now on this idea. What does humanistic management mean in the age of the AI? But there's some big traditions on this. This is, from the Pope to Dalai Lama and to others. There's something here which is about human dignity, and that people are beyond data points or just that we can do it. The person is more than data. The attempt to translate our basic human capabilities, our judgment, our wisdom and character into metrics and control loses what matters most.
So you're fairly critical in the book of the way the term soft skills is used, and you also argue that these are the hardest and most valuable skills. Can you expand a little bit on that thought?
Well, you remember people used to talk about the soft. First, you learn this and this and this, and then you learn some soft skills, and you're useful.
Yeah.
So it turns out, of course, it used to be. One used to say that it was like your competence in the traditional hard skills, whatever it is, technical and business skills, will get you a job. But then you can say, but it's the lack of soft skills that will get you fired.
Yeah.
Right? But I never liked the term soft skill. I always talked about human skills and human basic capabilities, as I say now. And I think we just have to flip the pyramid a little bit. That what you thought were at the lowest rung is actually the highest one.
Yeah.
It is what will enable, if AI tools, LLMs and whatever comes after knows everything and can provide an instant answer and good stuff and some hallucinations, but can do that, what should you do? And if AI agents independently can actually make some decisions and move on and continue to work for 24 hours and produce what you used to do in 6 months, clearly there's something here for everybody to consider, namely to climb a sort of value creation ladder. You have to step up. This, however, causes some challenges. Not just that we have to be more value creating in this world, but also like if you become a manager, quote unquote, or a team leader of AI agents who do the work that we've automated away that normally young people would do, junior people would do. How can you be manager of agents doing work you've never done?
Yeah.
So there's a layer and layer of these things. Like, well, I'm a supervisor of some machines that do stuff that I don't have a clue about. So it's really interesting thinking about the consequences of this, because apprenticeship is where we learn our judgment, right? Our wisdom, if we have any. The scars and everything we collect during our lifetime. And if we replace that, what happens to human wisdom in a sense? It's like it becomes a little bit artificial wisdom. That's a little bit scary to me.
Yeah. And what about the actual role of leaders and managers in these types of organizations that are embracing this technology? Where do you think that challenges? Where do you think the challenges are in that realm?
I think there's a lot of challenges. I see confusion. I hear anxiety. I actually observe almost outright panic in boards of directors, and especially when I ask this question, what if you subtracted AI from this meeting? The thinking from your thinking here, what you had, what remains?
Yeah,
and that people find a very important question. And I often say, well, AI will tell you what's more likely because of, it will come to a median of the training data eventually even if you think it's creative, the recombination would be a median of the training data. So I said, AI will tell you this, what's more likely. Who in your company is paid to tell you what is most important?
Yeah.
So these are just some indicators of how difficult it is to be a leader now. In part of a board of directors, especially if you're a little bit more senior age-wise as well.
Yeah.
And you're perhaps not as fast in learning these tools as a lot of young people are. So it's like the professor who's trying to teach a bunch of kids who are way beyond all the tools than this professor is. It's the same kind of challenge. So it's a huge, huge challenge for everybody who is more senior now. And I always tell leaders, you have to be a reasonable role model. You cannot be just sitting on your desk and ordering people to be AI literate if you're not. Right? This is one of the reasons I dug into this very quickly and do that. And I do spend time with leaders now, and they say, "Oh, Johan, we'd like my team to be as reasonably competent as you are." And I'm not a tech expert. I'm just reasonably okay at doing, because we need to. And I said, "Yes, you should. You should. You need to ensure that your team are good speaking partners who have some kind of judgment of whether this goes in right or wrong direction."
Yeah.
So then they respond, okay, good. Can we do this and learn this in 12 months?
Yeah.
I said,
Yeah.
"No, 12 days.
Yes.
It's like it's sort of a wrong, it's a challenging time because this is my interest and focus. And I said, what is the impact of all of this on leadership?
Mm-mm. Yeah.
And it's an open, there's no answer to this. It's just we have to practice, learn, study, engage, all of these things. I write a lot of practice-oriented papers now, and I can just give you a few examples. I have one called "The Metric Your Board Should Be Asking For."
Right.
And the subtitle is "AI productivity numbers are green. Whether your workforce is amplifying or eroding remains invisible."
Yeah.
That gap belongs in the board pack.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And how would you start going about measuring that?
Well, I have some ideas.
Oh, right.
And it's not about being precisely right. It's about being roughly have an
Yeah.
indicator where it's going. And it's actually possible. I've done a lot of operationalization of measurement models before, so I'm working on this with some really cool people. But, another question, another title is, it was just published here, the 3 AI decisions only the CEO can make. It was just published in the CEO World magazine. And those decisions are, 1, which human capabilities does your business compete on?
Yeah.
Number 2, whether AI is really an amplifier or of your people or a substitute for them. You have to make that decision. It's not a big decision, it's micro decisions in everything you do. And the third one is, what is your reward? What will your reward system credit now?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it ultimately is for the leaders to decide what kind of organization do they want AI to help them create over the next year or 2. This is going to happen. And that's a tricky one if you're not into this.
Yeah. I wrote an article, it might be 9 months now, called "The AI Commoditization Trap." It's like, once you and your competitors have got as efficient as you can be, using this stuff, what's left? As you say, what do you compete on? And I like the way that you talk about the 5 human capabilities in the book: curiosity, creativity, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. Really nice. They all begin with C. That's very handy. But yeah, these are the human capabilities that we compete on, and the productivity stuff. I have to say, I personally, I understand why it's there, but I can't get very excited about it, because at the end of the day, you can just end up in a race to the bottom if you don't prioritize those 5 human capabilities that you mentioned.
No, I think so. There's something on top of that. But first, let's think. You are part of a leadership team, or you're reporting to the boss or whatever, and they say, hey, help us, we should need to develop a new strategy. So you ask some of the AI tools, you run this through several, say, to help us develop this strategy based on this and this, and what should we do, blah, blah, blah. Ultimately, as you say, it will converge on the same answer.
Yes.
It will be the same slide deck.
Yeah.
At least some of the big consulting companies can, fiddle a little bit with the stuff, but it will be ultimately the same slide deck, if I'm in extreme. So where does that take us? It forces us to go above and beyond. And beyond these capabilities, I talk about, as you can see, the notion of practical wisdom, which is sort of a 19th century translation of prudentia from Thomas de Aquinas, which is sort of his interpretation of Aristotelian phronesis and so forth. But we're not alone in this. This is the sort of the ability to make, it's actually the habit of making decisions and taking action that are good, not just for me, but for the community that I'm a part of. Sort of the good life, there's Greek terms about this. And it turns out that this is very similar to what is discussed in Vedic traditions as Vivek. Or in Confucian tradition, or in the Japanese tradition of creating a space for talking about this called Ba. And even in Islamic scholarship, they talk about this as hikmah. Right. So these are almost, and there's an Ubuntu tradition as well in Southern Africa. And so these are very global, normal humanistic ideas of like, that's our human magnificence. This is our human magic. And I put it into what I call this compass, if you remember that. This whole idea of basically it's 4 questions. What matters?
Mm.
What is right?
Yeah.
What resonates in a sense with the people there? This is an emotional thing as well. And what will work, which is like with courage, like what will work? And you can say like the AI tools will help us with probably say what matters because you can do an analysis of this and so forth. But there's some kind of moral sensitivity to that, like that the tools can help us, but we have to be sensitive on this. And the same thing with like what resonates with people. So we can tell AI, well, they're a little bit sensitive to this and this and this. What happens? What should I do? So you can get some guidelines there. You have to use your cognitive sort of sensitivity or your sensitivity of understanding other people. But what I don't think the AI can do or should do is answering what is right and what actually works. Because that is your judgment call. And judgment is the behavioral manifestation of practical wisdom. It's the face of your wisdom. When you make a decision and say, this is the right thing versus the wrong thing. This is the good thing versus the bad thing. These are like, and that is what we have to practice and practice and practice. And this is ancient knowledge, but there are ways of doing it.
Yeah. I often muse that we're way closer to the caveman than we would we would want to give ourselves credit for. And actually, one thing that humans have lost over the years is that kind of intuition about what feels right, and going back to a time when your life depended on it. If something felt a bit dodgy, then you got the hell out of there. And I think I share your worry that actually some of that could easily get lost even further and more quickly. In this scenario,
it does, Nigel, and again, look at young people. We talked about that in the first episode, but look at how young people are getting addicted to this now. It's easy to lock yourself in the room, right? As a kid, and mom and dad are a little bit nuts. I don't want like them. I don't want to be there. And then you have a conversation with your Gemini or Claude or ChatGPT or whatever. That's a little bit scary. And there are, of course, some extreme cases of this now where the machine gives advice. And some of the biggest early applications, are actually in therapy. So, of course, you can say, hey, read everything you can about cognitive behavioral therapy. Or psychotherapy to be even more scary. Like, so you go from psychology to psychotherapy. I mean, it's not, these are shaky ground. It's wonderful to have somebody confirming you all the time. But so these are some of the more scary parts of it, especially with young people who do not have the judgment or the wisdom to kind of assess this. But you could say, on the other hand, some of the most exciting opportunities with young people, I think, is in education. I think is having personalized education. Finally, not just like you get the same deck from the professor, but you have an assistant. You have like what is it called, Benjamin the Cricket, in the Disney movie, sitting on your shoulder, whispering in your eye. You work, and some people are already developing it. Fantastic. And an Amigo, I think Khan Academy did this very well. And an Amigo, somebody who sits and talks to you, and you will have the most fantastic opportunity to learn and practice and get feedback and see things in 3D, and it's awesome, fantastic. So we have this amazing way to amplify ourselves and young people and to go where we never went, and then you have these really super scary scenarios of young people becoming dependent, eroding themselves, leaving them bringing, damaging their soul for the future in this. So it's like heaven and hell. It's going to be both.
Yeah. Yeah.
We just have to be careful. That's what I'm saying. Hold on to your human magic. That's all I'm saying.
We're coming towards the end of this episode. It's been a fascinating conversation. Let's leave it on a positive and a practical note. If there's one thing that you would like my listeners to take away, apart from reading the book, which obviously goes without saying, but if there's one thing that you would like people to pay a bit more attention to, what would it be?
One is more like a little bit philosophical, but like, don't forget what we talked about, in a sense that people are more than data.
Yeah.
Right. And if you keep just that in mind, you know that you can use this, but just be a little bit careful of that. The second thing I want to say is this notion of that amplification and erosion is actually choice. It's many choices. It's like micro choices every day. That's the message, in a sense. Like, you decide. You're the agent here. You have agency to rule your world, in this respect. And then maybe it's to sort of, I don't want to tell people what to do, but there is this idea of being able to integrate across all of this, to be able to use your magnificent human capabilities in a way that build your own wisdom, in a sense. There's like, never forget that the experiences you do, the apprentices stuff to do, everything sort of builds yourself here. And that is, I think, the ability to answer those questions. What matters? What is right? What resonates? And what works? Those are the things you should really focus on. When you will have different answers at different stages in your life and different works, but when you can answer those questions with your own words, not with AI words, I think you have an advantage, because that will be the capability that provides value creation and even competitive advantage.
That is a wonderful thought with which to wrap up these 2 episodes. Johan, thank you so much for taking the time.
Nigel, it's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thanks very much. There's a phrase Johan used in this conversation that I kept coming back to: keep humans at the center. It's something leaders and boards say constantly, and as Johan pointed out, it's becoming increasingly empty, a sentiment that survives the slide deck announcing restructuring and redundancies, and then quietly disappears. When people are our greatest resource is the line that follows news of mass layoffs, it isn't a value, it's a line. That gap between what organizations say about their people and what they actually do sits at the heart of what this half of the conversation was really about. Johan referenced the MIT Project Iceberg study, which modeled 150 million workers across 32,000 skills. Its conclusion? What we're seeing now is just the visible tip. The real disruption hasn't arrived yet. Against that backdrop, I found Johan's reframe of so-called soft skills genuinely clarifying. He's done away with the term entirely, and rightly so. Curiosity, creativity, critical thinking, communication, collaboration. These aren't soft. They're the capabilities that take the longest to develop, that are the hardest to replicate. And in a world where every organization is converging on the same AI-generated strategy, the only meaningful basis for differentiation. And then there's what Johan calls practical wisdom, the meta capability that sits above all the others. It's not a new idea. It runs through Aristotle, through Aquinas, through Confucian and Vedic tradition, through the Ubuntu philosophy of Southern Africa. Different names, same insight. The capacity to ask from your own accumulated experience what matters, what is right, what resonates, and what will actually work. No model can answer those questions for you. And if we stop practicing the habit of answering them ourselves, we will lose the ability. What stays with me most from the conversation is Johan's fundamental optimism. He isn't telling us the machines are coming for us. He's telling us we have agency. Whether AI amplifies or erodes our human capabilities is, ultimately, our choice to make. That feels the right place to leave it. That's almost it for this episode of Standing Apart, and that brings our two-part conversation with Johan to a close. I hope across these two episodes you've heard something that genuinely shifts the way you think about your relationship with AI and with your own capabilities. I'll put a link to Human Magic in the show notes. If the ideas we've discussed resonate with you, it's a book that rewards the time. All past episodes are available to browse whenever you like. I have more guest conversations in the pipeline, plus a few solo episodes in between, so to make sure you don't miss anything, do subscribe. And a quick reminder, this show only grows if listeners like you back it. The algorithms will not do it for us. So if you can, hit subscribe, leave a rating, and tap that like button in your podcast app. It really does help more than you think. Until next time, whatever you do, stand apart from the crowd. Standing Apart is a Sun Bear Consulting production.